Welcome to Money Mondays with Melissa, where we talk about financial empowerment while exploring financial assistance available through local, state, and federal governments each month with a diverse group of subject matter experts. Chicago, are you ready to get financially empowered? Well, we've got just what you need. Without further ado, give it up for your Chicago City Treasurer, Melissa Conyears-Ervin.
Hello and welcome to Money Mondays with Melissa. Before we dive into today's insightful session, there are a couple of important points to go over. First, we're excited to inform you that today's session is being recorded and we will be available for viewing on both our Facebook and YouTube channels within the next 24 hours. If you encounter any technical difficulties during the live event, please don't hesitate to use the chat feature to inform us, and we'll do our best to assist you promptly. Additionally, we invite you to actively engage with us through the chat. Feel free to send in any questions or comments you might have during the presentation. We are delighted to welcome you to today's insightful webinar, Building Wealth and Creating Change Through Home Ownership, with 3 local developers and real estate industry leaders. Today's subject matter experts will discuss with us their stories to and in the home ownership field for them and their families, as the month is National Homeownership Month. I'm honored to have today's guest panelists, Mr. AJ Patton, Mr. Phil Beckham, and Ms. Bonita Harrison, to join our City Treasurer, Melissa Conyears-Ervin, for this conversation. We turn it over to you, Madam Treasurer.
All righty. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Money Mondays with Melissa, which is a virtual financial program that helps Chicagoans learn practical money management skills, featuring financial experts and community leaders discussing various financial products and services. Now, today's discussion focuses on home ownership and real estate, as June is National Home Ownership Month. And how dare we not also mention, as we are excited about this being June, National Home Ownership Month, how appropriate it is for me to also say Happy Juneteenth, because as we celebrate Juneteenth, we certainly think about home ownership, its importance, and how we invest in ourselves and how we empower community members to invest in ourselves. And also, happy belated Father's Day to all of the fathers that are out there listening. Hope that you enjoyed your Father's Day. With that being said, I am pleased to introduce 3 wonderful panelists, my friends. This will be a great conversation. And my good friends that I have here with me today will be talking about succeeding in real estate and home ownership. First, we have AJ Patton, who is the CEO and founder of 548 Enterprise, a social impact firm with an impressive track record of redeveloping metropolitan communities by utilizing renewable and sustainable technologies. AJ is a real estate leader with over 15 years of experience. He looks very young, I know, both on the south and west sides of Chicago, and has been named one of Midwest Energy's 40 under 40. And next we have Bonita Harrison, the CEO and founder of Sunshine Management. Sunshine Management distinguishes itself by being a trailblazing social impact developer. Their primary focus really lies in fostering sustainable growth within disinvested neighborhoods. Harrison is the first woman and first Black person to be honored as the Developer of the Year by the Cook County Land Bank. Very well. And finally, last but not least, Philip Beckham, a real estate investor, hotel owner, and entrepreneur. Beckham is first and foremost a relationship builder and is a staple amongst the business community. Phil received the CoStar Impact Award for Multifamily Development of the Year and serves as the Executive Director of Mid-South Business Association and Resource Center. I will also say, as I bring all three to you today. These are probably familiar faces because I know all out in the community. As you know, when I did introductions, I mentioned South and West sides of Chicago, inner community, how they're working. You may have seen them out in the community because certainly AJ, Phil, and Bonita make certain that they are out in the community helping their community. So thank you so much, my good friends, for joining us today. And I want to start just with your stories. Now, while three of you come from various backgrounds, I want really the audience to know as you look back, I want the audience to hear, as you look back over your career, can you share your personal journey of how you got to where you are today? How you became a homeowner. And AJ, I want to start with you. And by the way, AJ is a father of a young baby, so he's doing very well, staying awake right now. So AJ, welcome. Tell us about how you came to this journey, and certainly as a homeowner.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for having me, and I appreciate the Happy Father's Day to Phil and I.
Absolutely.
We're recapturing Father's Day. We're gonna make it a big thing again. I started the company in 2015, but I frankly, the inspiration for the company started in '99. My mother received a $400 gas bill. She was making $10 an hour, and so unfortunately, we got our gas shut off, and for over a year, we had to boil water to take a bath. And so as I went on to become the first generation college grad and have some success professionally, and I wanted to start a company so that no one else had that experience ever again. And so I built a company around rebuilding communities so that they had access to sustainable technologies and energy efficient homes. And so we started the company in 15, 16. And, I feel like many of our communities have been left out of the sustainable conversation. And so I wanted to create a platform for us to just have access. And in that, we built the platform around the investments and the real estate development and the solar development and electric charging vehicle development in the South and West sides of Chicago. And we've now opened offices in St. Louis as well. And then my personal path to home ownership was just that. I saved up a ton. Had to educate and plan. I made a boatload of financial mistakes as a young person with credit cards and student loans, and just being really poorly informed about financial literacy. And then eventually found a condo for me to start with and really kind of start my family in. And then we've moved a couple of times since then. But it took a lot of education because, frankly, we just did not know, from my family's perspective, what I was getting into and what it took. And so there was a lot of mistakes made particularly with those credit cards that we had to learn. And it was a process to get through those 20s and clean up some of those mistakes of yesteryear.
Bonita?
Yes. Hello, Madam Treasurer. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to sit here beside my brothers in the development space. Happy Father's Day, Phil and AJ.
Thank you.
I was fortunate to have lived with my grandparents growing up in the Black Belt. My grandparents, they bought their first home in North Kentwood in the 1950s on a land contract at 27% interest. They were one of the lucky families who were able to pay off their mortgage. Our family still owns the home. So outside of the dormitories at UIC, my first apartment outside of living with my grandparents was me becoming a homeowner. So I became a homeowner in 2006 at the young age of 24. I bought a house in the Grand Crossing community with the expectation I will live there for 30 years. However, I bought the home in March and I sold it in November. And it was a seller's market in 2006. My equity grew substantially in only 7 months. I sold the home and I made a profit of about $83,000. So that's what prompted my trajectory into development and becoming an investor.
Wow.
So that's how I started off.
All right, Phil.
Yes. So I started, P3 Markets is about an 8-year-old company, and we are a real estate development company in Chicago, based in Brownsville, really focused on TOD projects, transportation-oriented development projects, and also some community impact. as well. To where we work now is 2 blocks from where I used to live. I had my second home in Brownsville. So really excited about the impact that we bring with P3 Markets. My journey to my first actual purchase was a condo. Got out of college in '87, went back home to work in our family company, and my dad said, great. My first month rent was $500. And then the second month came, he said it's $1,000. Then the third month was $1,500. I said, okay, I see the trend. So we already had a relationship at First National Bank of Harvey at the time, and that's where we were. And interest rates were low. They took a dive at 12.5% at that time, and found a condo in Hyde Park because the banker said, your payment is going to be much less than $1,500 a month, and it's going to stabilize you because your dad is about to charge you $2,000 a month next month. So got the place. That was my first owner. I owned something there. That was a 1-bedroom condo in Hyde Park, and my payment was $363 a month compared to what I was going to get hit up by my dad. So he was a great incentive. He gave me some great incentive to get out. He never said get out. He just told me what my rent was going to be every month. So that was my first experience buying a home. But because I was with my parents and my dad and mommy involved my brother in all financial aspects. Money was not something it was always talked about. In fact, my dad would take my brother and I to school sometimes, but we wouldn't get to school because he'd take us to meetings at the bank. He'd take us to meetings at different spaces. And so we understood it, and he talked about it. My uncles talked about it, my grandfather. So it was always spoken of. And so when I got the opportunity at 12.5%, that was a low interest rate. It just dropped from 15. So now, I look at interest rates when we're doing our work, and I'm still old enough to remember, okay, well, 5.5% is not 12.5. So let's move on and get this process going. So that was my experience.
And I want to say this because AJ opened up and said, I made some mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then even, Bonita and Phil, you talked about your experiences, how have you learned? Bonita, you even mentioned 27% interest rate, right?
Yes.
And you said, but they were one of the lucky ones.
Mm-hmm.
Is it right? So I want our audience to hear, because you all three are very well established, have done very well, but it wasn't a roadmap necessarily prepared for us. We had to learn, we had to make mistakes. The reason we do these segments, the reason we do what we do is because we don't want people to make the same mistakes that we made. And so I really thank you for the transparency in your opening. And I want you to go on and let's talk to specifically the millennials, whom we want home ownership to be a long-term investment. Because sometimes, we live in a society, everything is about get rich quick right now, or it doesn't work, and that's not always reality. So how do we talk to the millennials specifically about long-term investments? And Phil, I'll start with you on that.
Sure. So I have to thank Bonita and AJ for letting me know what I am. I'm 59. I didn't know if I was a Gen X. I didn't know what I was. And my kids, I have 3. I'm a proud dad of 3. My son is 27, and I have twin daughters that are 24. And I asked one of my daughters, and I think she's a little bit younger than a millennial. I don't know what she is. But I said, what does it take for you to actually buy something? And she said, number one, I'm not established. If I'm going to get married and have kids, then I'm going to buy. But for me now, and this is her friends as well, they don't plan on staying in one spot for more than 2 years. So they may live in Miami. They may live in Chicago for 2 years, Miami for 2 years, because most of their careers are in their laptops. And they're the same ones that also say, why would I buy a car? I have to pay a car note. I have to pay parking tickets, which will sometimes outpace the car note, insurance. For them, it doesn't make any sense because the public transportation system is what they use. They're the throwbacks. They're the throwbacks from when public transit was it. So to get them to understand what buying a property is, being a homeowner, what they see and what they witnessed doesn't make much sense to them. And they're also the same group that says, why would I work someplace for 35 years? That makes no sense at all. Why would I give my life to somebody for a company and get nothing in return, and I get no satisfaction? So that's a mindset that is not their fault. They watch what happened. They watch family members work forever and get nothing. They watch family members get homes and then end up underwater because bankers have done things to make it worse. So it's going to be tough to convince them because they've witnessed what's happened. And they have a whole different aspect of life. And and I envy them sometimes because they go and they develop their wealth differently by having 5-6 different streams of income. They understand that. And it's all, via the internet, different scopes of things. My son, even one of his first jobs was managing a guy who was on some video thing, and he managed his social media, and the guy went viral, and now all of a sudden, they all do well. It's amazing. There was no education for that other than being on the internet. So I think that's a great question, but they witnessed collapse. Mm-hmm. And they don't really want any part of that, unless when you talk about, they always say, if I'm going to get married and have children, now I'm going to buy something where I'm going to be stable in one spot. Otherwise, if I'm not, what's the point?
Yes. Bonita?
Yes. So as a millennial, or a geriatric millennial,
oh gosh,
I think they call us zennials. I'm right in the cusp. I'm 32 years old. So a lot of us, we look at all the problems, and a lot of us have not relocated from our parents' home. But there is certain strategies that I do believe that we should employ. So one of those strategies that I promote is house hacking. And that's where you'll buy a property, a 2 to 4 unit property. You'll live in one unit and you allow the other units to cover your mortgage, and you also make a profit. And because we've seen the downfall and there's all the issues, we have to cut the grass and plow the snow. We really don't understand the perks or the benefits of home ownership. So I think educating us on what the benefits of home ownership is. So a lot of millennials as well, a lot of my friends, they haven't even had kids. So we're in our 40s and we have not had children at this point. So the purpose of home ownership is a tax strategy as well. So 100% of your interest payments, is tax deductible up to $750,000. So if you're paying rent,
which is everybody,
many
people that don't fall into that. Yes,
is not many people who don't fall. So if you're paying rent and you say you pay $1,000 a month, at the end of the year, $12,000 you've given away to someone. But if you own a home, you're able to deduct that same $12,000. And then the other money, you have to think about it as if you're putting it into a savings account. So that's driving down your principal. So you're paying off your principal. So that's the equity that you're creating in the home. So it's a win-win. So you're either reducing your tax liability or you're saving up for something. And the property also appreciates. So I think we don't understand the advantages, and we only look at all the downfalls, the things that we've seen from our predecessors. So if we can understand the benefits of home ownership, I think we'll be a little bit more motivated to move in that direction.
And I'll just add just a little bit, because I think Phil laid out the kind of the stage for young people and what they've seen perfectly. And Bonita, as always, surmised exactly where my head was. But I think the connection between the two is perfect in the sense that, as Phil referenced, there are a lot of them considering, how can I invest and get multiple streams of income? And I think Phil said a more articulate way of saying this generation has some commitment issues, right? And so I think what Bonita just laid out is one of their ways to back into home ownership without the full commitment, at least their version of commitment, right, or the historical lens of commitment of how we view home ownership. And I think the house hacking is the perfect compromise that Bonita just outlined. And so I just wanted to exclamate two really good points.
Yeah. And so I was going to call on you next anyway. So that definitely worked out. Let's talk a little bit about gentrification. This is a hot topic, especially on the south and west sides of Chicago. So let's talk about what strategies that we can employ as we talk about home ownership. What can we do to prevent gentrification and displacement while also promoting home ownership? I'll start with Benita, and then AJ, if you can tag on that and Phil, that would be great.
I think it's important to understand that any community experiencing any significant investment will experience gentrification. So I think the question for me is, how do current residents of a community that is experiencing investment compete with the gentrifying community? So as property values increase, I feel like we need public-private partnerships to focus on an equity grant to offer up some gap funding to the current residents to assist with filling the gap. So there's a few initiatives I know of happening now. So there's a partnership with myself, NHS, NDL3, Leon Walker, where we're creating a community in Inglewood called Inglewood Square, where we're doing a block of homes and we're going to sell them at an affordable rate. That way, homeowners or residents of that community, they're able to come in and buy affordably and actually own the property. Because a lot of the models are aimed at renters in the community for affordability, but not home ownership. So we have to really look at ways where the current resident can stay within the community, but also own the community.
Yeah, and I have a bit of a different angle on gentrification as a whole. I think what Benita just outlined is the perfect compromise, and I'm going to be intentional with my words. I think it is the perfect compromise. So let's build some homes at an affordable rate for folks to purchase and be able to stay. But my sensitivity about gentrification is, if a group of folks have deemed your community valuable and an investment is coming, I just am really passionate about where are we when the money's being spent? Who's getting those jobs? Who's getting those contracts? Because the biggest issue I have with gentrification, yes, you like my neighborhood, you find us attractive. But when you go and parachute in other folks to come swing those hammers and get that insurance contracts, and they're the mortgage broker and they bought the cars and they're bringing in the dirt, that's the issue. Because if you're spending your money in my neighborhood with us, then it allows us to participate in the ascension of the neighborhood. I believe in the free market capitalism, or whatever you want to call it. I just believe that I should be a part of it. Don't do it in front of me. Allow me to be in it.
Yeah.
And so that's where I get sensitive to the conversation, because too often somebody will say, oh, Bronzeville's the new cool neighborhood, or West Garfield Park's the new cool neighborhood. And I don't see nobody looking like us swinging them hammers. I don't see nobody looking like us that's the electrician or on them roofs and getting those insurance contracts and being the lawyer on those contracts and engineering those contracts. That's where I get active. I don't mind, there's a ton of vacant lots. Come one, come all, God bless you. If you come in to add value to my community, you're welcome. I don't care what you look like, who you pray to, as long as you root for the team I care about, that's all I care about.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But how you spend your money tells me way more about you than anything else. And that's where I get a little more of an eyebrow raise.
Yeah, I think I appreciate both comments. And what we did with 43 Green was more than just filling a vacant lot. For us, it was more of bringing people back that were from that community that didn't have new construction with amenities, that would typically go to West Loop and South Loop and pay $3,000 for a studio. Now, there's more to that. To get them back to where they're from, where they grew up, and where their parents still live, and for them to have a place to grow, not only maturity business-wise, but financially, and now they can stay there, because there are quite a few of the people that are 25 to 35 that still haven't bought, but now they're back home and they see the change in their neighborhood, and now they have the opportunity and the want to buy in their own, in Bronzeville, buy 2-3 blocks away, because they can sit out on the rooftop that they get to enjoy and see the new homes being built, and a lot of them being built by us, and say, you know what, I can stay here. And that way, I mean, like AJ said, gentrification is part of it. But I can say in the neighborhood that we've been working in, a lot of gentrification is done by, we're participating in it. There are Black families that are moving in that are paying $750,000, $800,000, $900,000 for homes. But also we have current residents that have really embraced the new appraisals that our development is given up to $200,000, $250,000, and now they have something for their kids, college tuition all there. But we also embrace the seniors that have been there and make sure that it doesn't affect them negatively by bringing in the assessor, making sure they applied for all the property tax benefits from getting it reduced because they're seniors, and getting grandfathered where it is, so it doesn't have put stress on them. So there are many different ways for that impactful development that could have scared everyone away and say, hey, here it is. Everybody's going to have to leave because this is going to change our neighborhood. But the change we wanted to make was an impact for the people that are there to maintain and be involved in it. And to AJ's point, yes, we make sure that you can see visibly the people that look like us that work there, and the ones you can't see, the attorneys, the TIF agents, everybody that we can find, the interior designers, all of the architects. So yes, because I would be I was in Brownsville for a long time and look outside and never see us work, everybody else. So my intent was my intent the whole time, is to make sure that people could look out their doors and windows and see somebody like them working on a major project.
And let me say that I can attest to what the three of you have said. So first of all, as we talk about gentrification, what I hear is that from your developments that you all are doing in the community, let's be clear, in the community, you want the residents that are there to benefit from these developments. And of course, we do this work. We do this education. We've been talking about education. You all that are listening, no roadmap has been prepared for us. Let's be frank. We are still learning. Let's learn. We have to make certain we're prepared. But with that being said, we have people that are out here that want you to benefit. And so I can attest to all three individuals on this line when they talk about representation matters, diversity matters, looking outside your window, seeing all this work being done and no one looks like you on that job site. That's insulting, right? That's offensive, right? These three on the line are just examples of how people in our community that are being intentional. And by the way, it's not just workers that you see on the site. I've been to all three of you, your organization's initiatives. I've seen diverse accountants. Hey, neighbors won't see them standing outside on the job site.
Even though I try to get my accountants out there to stand there. And the architect, just stand out there.
Hey, I've seen diverse architects, diverse engineers. I've seen diverse lawyers. You're not going to see them out on the job site per se, but all of that matters. And this is also important because if we have people that are listening that are saying, how can I get into the industry? You certainly can be a worker on the site, but there's plenty of other jobs and opportunities that are available as well. So I'm glad that you all mentioned that. And I'll ask you, as you can hear this passion that you all have. What drives this passion? Talk to me about even a project that really was the eye opener for you. Could have been the first project, could have been the third, whatever, that you saw some real challenges that you learned from and how that has helped you to be where you are today, but helped you with that passion that you have. And AJ, I want to start with you and then Bonita and Phil.
Yeah. The one, our mission was around sustainability and getting access. I've said this a handful of times privately that I've learned that is not the biggest impact. The impact is the jobs. And I would start with the project we did on 79th and Loomis. We did a about a $2 million mixed-use rehab on the corner of 79th and Loomis in Alderman David Moore's ward. And, we started that project, and I realized that the influence was, as the developer owner, who got the contracts. And I bet I was 3 weeks into the project, and we totally scrapped every decision we made. And I said, everybody that we pick moving forward is going to be from the neighborhood or have ties to the neighborhood. At every level, in terms of hard constructions and soft skills and all of that. And so that was a real learning for me, because then I saw the growing momentum of confidence of everyone around us, and the story of the project grew way much larger than $2 million. That meant so much to 79th Street, and Alderman Moore has been really passionate about saying, hey, since we've done that project, the Pritzker Prize came to 79th Street, Invest Southwest, 2 buildings on 79th Street came. And I love to remind those developers that we were first going down there. But it also, that we were really intentional, even when the banks were uncomfortable. That's probably a secondary conversation, that they had not seen a coalition look like that at that scale. And they just had to get used to it, or they had to sit in that discomfort. And then we executed and shown that this is what a coalition of success can look like at scale. And so I would highlight that project.
Yes. Myself, I remember attending a NARAB conference, and that's the National Association of Black Realtors. And I learned that only 3 out of every 10 homes in a 100% Black community was owned by a Black person. So that I was a little disturbed by that. So that's kind of what drove my passion for educating Black people about the benefits of home ownership and doing my part in just creating more Black homeowners. But one of my most significant projects I would talk about is the Buy Back the Block on the 6300 block of Evans in the West Woodlawn community. And it was important because it existed in a neighborhood that was known as the most dangerous neighborhood in America. So it was historical because the ownership structure was 100% Black. It was 5 Black developers. We employed over 150 people, all of which were women or people of color. So not just the cleanup crew or the security, but all our professional services, architects, legal team, realtors, surveyors were all of color. We completed this project in record time. It only took us 5 months. It said that when you hire minorities, your project will slow down by 30%. We don't know of any other project completed and sold in the same amount of time as ours or less. And everyone from the ownership down to the cleanup crew was of color. The wealth and the equity that we created in the West Woodlawn community. I've been to a few events, and a few Black women have came up to me and just said, I want to thank you, because now I have hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I want to say that again, hundreds of thousands of dollars of equity in my home. Can you please tell me, what can I do with that? So there's so much opportunity. And we talk about building wealth. We talk about Black economics, to be able to have that type of impact in a community such as West Woodlawn. And as AJ said earlier, those lots were only worth $6,000. That project is worth over $8 million now. So the taxes and everything that's created from that project, seeing all the excavators on every single block, just driving investment, driving development, and being able to see Black people take advantage of it and build equity in their homes. I think it was very impactful. So I share in the same sentiments as AJ.
Benita, I love the story all the time. I drive by and see it. It's impactful. It's really cool. So mine, because I've only been doing this for 5 years, I only have one project to talk about, and that's 43 Green. And it is, I've learned a lot, but what I've always known is whatever business I'm in is always people. And this was a project that I needed to make sure, since it was going to be in my neighborhood that my dad and my grandfather grew up in, I needed to make sure that you could see people and make a big difference. So the first thing was when we were sitting in with my partner, the Habitat company, and talking to construction companies, and all the regulars were there that you see on downtown projects. And my only question I ever had was, so who are you partnering with? What African-American company are you partnering with? And to watch the twists and turns on Zoom calls and the twist and the face changes was actually entertaining for me, because I didn't say anything. I just asked a question and sat back and stayed silent. And then another second round, they all had some sort of partnership set up. And a few said, no, we don't do it, and we're not going to. I didn't say anything. So we ended up with a good guy of mine, Nosa from Boa Construction, who's 51% of the JV. And then that was a beginning of how I knew I can make some changes in the way construction and development was done. Making sure I had Black attorneys that taking care of the zoning, making sure I brought on an engineer that I used to sit next to all the time at the coffee shop. And now, Kelsey is at Civil, Engaged Civil, is doing many other projects, but now he's been able to expand, not just because of ours, but the opportunity to be on a large project. And that's a $120 million project. And is one thing that I didn't know, but I learned quickly. We have 2 Black women that are construction management on the project. And I said, look, I don't know how this works, but if we have to get union workers, more workers, if we have to get 10, you demand 5 are Black. And she said, okay, which I didn't know. I'm sorry, that was possible. But then I said, I need to meet them all. So when they would come on the job, I'd say, hey, I'm one of the developer owners, and this is what I need you to do. I need you to be visible. I need you to park, not in the alley, but park on 43rd Street. I need you to take your break on 43rd Street, because these kids that walk up and down the street and the neighbors that look outside, I need them to see you. And they understood immediately, no questions, anything. And one of the most heartwarming parts about that construction site is I was getting off the train to go check it out, and kids were walking past to get on the train or walking to go to Mollison, and the guys were dapping the kids going by. Now, they rarely see Black men like that, but they got used to seeing them every day. And I have a neighbor just south of our project that's been there for 40 years, a war vet. And I was standing in the alley watching the project, and he came over. I said, what do you think? And this is what he said. He said, I'm 87. It's just another white group come over here building stuff and for them. I said, well, I want to introduce myself. I'm one of the developer owners, and I just wanted you to know that this is not going to be the same. And he started to cry, and he brought his wife out, and now that's my new buddy. He's not supposed to be smoking cigarettes, but I catch him all the time. And he said, if I can't do this now, whatever, but he has my number. The neighbors are all part of this development. One of the things I learned about development, that there's something called community engagement. I didn't know what that was, but I realized it's just talking to your neighbors. And they all have my cell number. They all call me when they see something. They call me before the Alderman dial or the police. Please tell them to call the police first. Don't call me. But it has become a community development, and it shows on our Instagram where we have over 300 people taking selfies with the building. That's not promotion. That's they want their own building. The people on our second building, the people on Prairie doing the same thing, because it's their building. They even had the first tenant that moved in. The neighbors across the street gave her presents and flowers, and that's, to me, that's what I knew I had to make it visible that we were there, and they've taken it's part of the community. So
being a part of the community, not a visitor to the community, not an in and out. It is taking ownership in the community. And let's talk a little bit about. I definitely don't want to end this conversation without talking about, as we call, the elephant in the room, and that is systemic racism. That is redlining. So if we're gonna, June is National Homeownership Month. June is also Juneteenth, where we talk about systemic racism that has existed for hundreds of years even before us. We're still dealing with that. We're still dealing with the history of systemic racism and redlining. But you all are very successful. Of course, the journey has not been easy. Every day, I'm sure you can say, wow, this has been some type of struggle today, but I keep going. Talk to us, and for those that are listening, about these policies that have impacted you. We talk about even the banking institutions. You all were saying they're kind of uncomfortable, right? Not necessarily seeing people like you coming to the table, needing this access to capital. Well, you've been needing it, but able to get it. So let's talk about how these policies have impacted you, how you've navigated around them. And so, Benita, I'll start with you, then Phil, then AJ. And then also what I want to do is make certain as you talk about this, let's talk about how National Homeownership Month and we're recognizing the significance of emancipation, but how we channel that spirit into empowering Black communities through home ownership. So again, it's talking about how you've overcome it, but also how we can channel that spirit into empowering Black communities through home ownership. And Benita, again, you, Phil, and AJ.
Okay. So, being young, being Black, being a woman, I've experienced racism, sexism, ageism, all the isms. So, I think one story I can talk about in particular where we had a few times just selling property on the south side of Chicago, and the appraisal bias that come along with that, where I've had a property in Chatham that we had a contract. We had 40 offers on the property, and all of the numbers were exceeding. So they're at 350, 400,000. But the appraiser that came, they valued the property at 300,000. So almost $100,000 less than what every community member and every agent who had experience in this marketplace thought the house should be worth. So I think appraisal bias is one of the things that I've had to navigate, and how we navigate that was really honestly just being prudent, being experienced, making sure that we can show our value, make sure that the plans are there, the permits are there, that we can show value. So we had to consistently fight that appraiser, and we had to go all the way up in fighting that. And we were able to challenge that and actually get our numbers. And then your second part of your question was, how do we celebrate National Homeownership?
Yes, talk about really how we channel that. Talking about emancipation, right? How do we channel that spirit into empowering Black communities through home ownership?
I think owning the land is important, possessing the land. We only have a limited supply of land, right? And how do you become vested? How do you become interested? And how do you take pride in ownership? I think it starts at home with just educating our children, our circle of influence about the benefits of home ownership. And home ownership has been the quickest vehicle to wealth creation, and just period. So I think just focusing on wealth creation, focusing on home ownership, and for us, reducing the equity gap that exists in communities of color, I think is just really important.
No, I agree with Benita. I'll take that question first. The education, again, being from where I live, where I grew up, money was talked about, and it wasn't talked about in a negative way. So you understood life insurance policies. I can tell you, at 15, my dad gave me an envelope that said, if you're reading this, I'm dead. Here's the steps you take. You call the insurance company, you call our attorney, you go get the key, the safety deposit key out of the safe deposit box. You go with, you get your uncle to take you to the box, empty it out. You have 15, 18 steps. And, then once you're done, then you can cry. But these are done first. So all that, I understood insurance policies, I understood all of that. And then every 2 years, he'd give me a new one. He'd update it. When I got to be 21, he updated it. But that education was at home, because my family, on my dad's side, money was always spoken of. And he got that letter. That letter was in the same envelope his dad gave him. So if it's normal, you're not afraid. So that what Benita talks about is critical, and to talk about it at home early. You know, when a lot of kids get information it's in high school, that's kind of late. It has to be discussed 7, 8, 9 years old, so it's normal for them. So they're not embarrassed when they get to high school and, you know, other kids aren't talking about it, because it's just normal. Now, the first question was, the redlining. So our the first project, it took us 2 years to get going because banks wanted no part of 43rd Street. You know, it's like, I don't know. We don't know if it's right yet, but I can tell you, here's the way it happened. And it still happens today. I finally convinced a bank to come to the site. I would ask them all to come to the site. Don't just look at it over Google Maps and all your data, because they have a lot of data that really is data. But if you're not there on the street, it'll turn you away. Fifth Third Bank, and I'll give them the props. They came out, and it was a rainy summer day, and they came out, and it was 4 of them that came, and they looked around, and they stayed for 20 minutes. And I stepped when they were making calls, and I stepped away from them, and they were walking around. They walked up and down the block, and they were standing and watching the train. And after 20 minutes, they said, "We're going to call you back." And they're the ones that made the commitment. And once they made the commitment and we did the first one, they said, "We're going to be here as long as you want to be here." But those same banks who wouldn't even come and take a look at it, now, of course, they want to open up bank branches. They want to be all involved, and they want to help finance. But again, yes, there is that bias that assumes that, you know, because it's in a Black neighborhood, it's not really going to work out. And having to actually ask somebody to come out, it was bothersome to begin with. And then when they did come, it was sort of redeeming. Like, see, I told you, we don't even have anything built. It's just vacant lots. But you can feel what's going to happen. You can feel the neighborhood. You can feel the energy, and you can feel the want that people have to make this a better space. So yes, that was my experience with this project. Now I've, you know, a lot of other experiences beyond this, but with this project, that's what it was.
Yeah, I'll try to end with the solution. I really kind of want to build on Phil's point, but I'll start with the issue. You're right, Madam Treasurer. The system's still broken. I think our city's still being redlined, frankly, and this is when I knew it was. We went up and down LaSalle Street almost 8-9 years ago now, and with our full business plan, and we had raised some money, and we're ready to start doing deals. And every single bank on LaSalle Street, those who aren't in Chicago, that's our version of Wall Street. Every single bank told us no. And I finally had a couple of folks, I held some bankers captive to explain why. And they couldn't give me an answer, but essentially here's what they told me. AJ, we don't lend in those communities, but we lend into the CDFIs, and the CDFIs lend in those communities. I said, well, why do I gotta, in the CDFIs their cost of capital is higher than the banks? So you're telling me I can't come and get your 5% money. I got to go take this 9% money from this other institution. And then you go meet the CDFIs, and they will very publicly say, our loan pool is as successful as everyone on LaSalle Street. So they'll say, we lend in these communities all day, every day, but we got a 98% success rate. And then you look on those CDFI boards and their loan committees, and the same executive that told me no at the bank sits on the loan committee of the CDFI. So you got time to execute on this loan, as long as it's through this third party entity, and as long as I'm paying double on the cost of capital as my counterparts that are investing downtown and on the north side. And not a single soul can push back on that. That is everything I just said is a fact. Pull up every single CDFI board, pull up all their loan committees, and it's executives from the same banks that lent them the money. And if you try to go around them to say, I'm gonna go to Inglewood and do a 6 flat, and I'd like to use regular bank capital, they all start sounding like mumble rappers all of a sudden. They can't get a straight sentence out their mouth. So then they force you to the CDFIs that have a longer underwriting process, higher cost of capital. They're all in your deal telling you what contractors you can and can't use. And then you still have to get a yes from the same folks that told you no for the cheaper capital. And nobody has ever held them accountable for that. And the banks still get the CRA credit for giving the CDFIs that money. So one of two things has to happen, Madam Treasurer. Either A, they need to start giving the CDFIs cheaper capital, because you're saying these are the only folks that want to lend to us. So instead of giving them 5% capital to give to us at 9, maybe they should give it to them at 2 so that we can get it at 5. Or B, we need to throw the CDFI, like we need to hold this whole system, turn it upside down, and somebody's got to be the rebel to call it. And I got my dad voice now, so I'm allowed to be honest. Now that I'm a dad, I get to use the dad voice.
Exactly.
So and nothing that I just said is up for debate. You just saw my other 2 contemporaries agree to that. That is absolute fact. And they control the entire South and West sides as 3 or 4 CDFIs.
Yeah. Once you realize it's a show, this is all a show.
It's all a show.
It's all a show. It's what stage are you on and who are the actors, and it's a show.
So I and every time I say it, folks get uncomfortable,
Which they should.
Because the truth of the matter is, Madam Treasurer, these are the only people that will lend in our communities, and there are a handful of exceptions if there is a LIHTC deal involved where there are federal tax credits. If you take those tax credits out of my own deals, Mr. Beckham's deals, others' deals, these banks will not be south of 43rd Street and west of Western. Let's just call spades. They're not lending on your 6 flat. They're not lending on you to try to build a grocery store without those tax credits, regardless of your track record. So that is the fact. I'll set that aside to be more positive.
It's a new way of being twice as good. You got to be twice as better. Just a new way.
Well, because Phil, how do we build how does the next Bonita emerge now that I'm a girl dad? How does the next Bonita emerge when all of their deals have to be at 9, 10, and 12% interest when they're competing against folks at 3, 4, 5, and 6?
We have to do like my grandfather did in the 30s and 40s, get loans from the people down the street who ran policy. So it's going to be you and our job to make sure we finance our daughters.
Which brings me to which Phil once again throws me alley-oop. Madam Treasurer, you asked for solutions about how we get through and beyond. I am passionate that we have to double down on ourselves.
Exactly. We
have got to recommit to doing business with one another, building the enterprise value of our neighbor, our allies. Exactly. Even at the simplest of things, I challenge everyone. I say, who's your insurance rep? Do they live in your neighborhood? Do they eat at the Peaches in your neighborhood? Yes or no? It's as simple as that. Who does your insurance? Who's your mortgage broker? Who's the lawyer on your closing? Yeah. You ain't got to be rich to have an insurance broker. We all pay insurance to everybody. And so it's the simple things about recommitting to ourselves to build the enterprise of your neighbor. Who cuts your grass? Who cuts your hair? It's beyond that now. And it's all the little things now accumulate to build that enterprise value of our neighbors so that we can have those conversations that Phil just mentioned of. My daughter needs a 5% loan instead of a 10%, so she can buy Miss Grady's home. Yep. Because if we don't buy Miss Grady's home, somebody else will, and it won't be in the image that we've continued in this street, in this neighborhood. So I think that we've got to commit to ourselves, Madam Treasurer.
I love it. And I have so many sticky notes on my desk right now. I'm going to tell you all, this has been amazing. Like, I'm learning some things too. So I'm over here like, you had me on this whole conversation. And then when you started talking about the difference between the CDFIs, the banking institutions, even I've just learned some things through this conversation that I'm like, wait, what? So we certainly have some work to do As you know, you've seen even the work that I've done partnering with the State Treasurer, Michael Ferricks, and our Advancing Equity in Banking Commission, because we want equity in banking. And, I take issue with paying more, higher loan rate. To your, how do we ever get out of this cycle?
It's the
How do we
development.
ever get to the point of building wealth if you're putting higher interest rates on us? Higher interest rates means higher payments.
Absolutely.
And so how do we get to the point that we can build for our families? It's just a cycle of debt that must stop. So I'll tell you, this has been very impactful. And while we have come a long way, we have so much more work to do, but we got to double down.
Yep.
I'm with you. There's definitely some work to do. So I'll ask this in closing. I know we have a couple of minutes, but this has been awesome. In closing, I want to ask for you all to give me closing comments, and really, what advice would you give to aspiring Black developers, aspiring homeowners? I want you to conclude, and this has been very impactful. And for those that are listening, share this segment with others. We have this where if you missed it live, you can go back and rewatch. Don't keep this information to yourself. We have to learn to share. Sometimes we share the wrong stuff. We need to learn how to share things that can make an impact on changing lives. So let's conclude, and tell me, what advice would you give? I want to start with Bonita, Phil, then AJ.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Madam Treasurer. AJ, the only funding sources we have on the South and West Side are CDFIs. So you have to become familiar with some of those funding sources, CCLF, CIC, C3, your network. Your network is your net worth. So you must network. Phil does an amazing job. AJ does a phenomenal job in networking. And also educate yourself. Become a student of your craft. Those are some of the,
Yeah. No, I agree. Some call our banking system, what we have to work is our currency exchanges.
Yeah.
So it is on that level. But I have quite a few people come to me about how do you get into development? Again, your network. Almost 70% of what I do most of the time is my relationship building, reaching out, calling, going to events. The events aren't fun things to continually go to. I mean, but you have to go because you see people and you need to talk to them. You need to see face to face, and these are relationship based business. When you need something done, if you can't pick up the phone to make a change or to get something done, you have a networking issue, relationship issue. The other thing I tell people, if you want to get involved in this and you're in the city of Chicago or any city, go to City Hall, introduce yourself to the people in the Department of Planning, introduce yourself, because they don't get many people to come there with anything other than complaints or threats that issues that they have. Introduce yourself, be able to share. Madam Treasurer, you said it, sharing. We refuse to share what we want to do like it's some secret. If that's the case, there'd only be one hamburger place because it's a secret. So share what you want to do, and then the people in the city hall are there to help you. And it's amazing when I've sent people there and they've gone. They're like, that was so nice. Everybody was nice. They introduced me to people. They gave me things to do. And then when I get the feedback from the people at City Hall, they said, hey, you sent some people that we gave them homework. They came back with it. And that's the way you can get started on this, because there's no class to learn how to jump out of an airplane and build your wings on the way down. That's what we do. There's no class for that. There's no class to be obsessed with the process to get something from start to closing. So again, your network, your relationships, this is all what this is. And then you get good people around you that are smarter than you in the things that you're not good in. And you get them involved and move your process.
And let me just compile thank you again, Madam Treasurer, for having me and having us. And this group here, I happen to be the president of the Phil and Bonita fan club. So this is great to always hang out with my friends. And so I will just surmise that I always tell folks that want to get started, is you need to have 3 of everything. You need to know 3 electricians. You know, if you're hearing a consistent theme between Benita, Phil, and I, is that it's all relationships. And I would just challenge that not only do you need to have a lot of relationships, you need to have depth in those relationships. So whatever you need to have 3 of them. 3 electricians, 3 roofers, 3 masons, 3 everything, and 3 lawyers, 3 accountants. Once you've built depth of all those folks, then you're really ready that you really have a coalition to really take on development, because eventually somebody's going to be busy, or someone's going to be expensive, or something's going to happen, and you're going to wish you had 2 more in the tuck. And so I always just tell folks that want to get in this game, build a wide set of relationships and a deep set of relationships, because you're going to need it in order to really get things across the finish line. And thank you again, Madam Treasurer, for having me.
Yes,
I tell you all, this has been amazing. We had an amazing panel. I told you all, these are my good friends that are successful doing things, but out in the community. There are some final points that I want to make certain that I leave you with today. But I will also say, if you missed any of our Money Mondays with Melissa, make certain you go to our website, ChicagoCityTreasurer.com. You can always rewatch any of these segments, send it to your family and friends. Also, we have financial education programs for free. This is our Money Mondays with Melissa segment, but we also have Money Matters Institute, MMI. So don't miss any of these things that we have. But I want to leave you all with some key points by the way, I'm going to be making social media posts all day today. Talk about Money Mondays with Melissa, but some key points. Understand from our panelists today, mistakes have been made. Mistakes have been made. You see them successful today, but they've made mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. You have to get up, go back at it, and know that you can't win if you're not in the race. You cannot win if you're not in the race. But also, we talk about ways that you could be a part of these development teams. You can be out there on the front line doing the work of these developments. You can be the one that is the accountant, the lawyer, the engineer, so many other facets that are included in making these developments work. Also, this is important. We have to buy back our blocks, buy back our neighborhoods. So when Benita said that 3 out of 10 homes in a predominantly Black community are owned by Black people, we have some work to do. We are the minority in our community. We have to invest in ourselves. But I know it's difficult, right? Because we have systemic racism. We have redlining that exists. But I want you to hear what one of our panelists said today. I believe it was Phil, that it took him 2 years to get funding. 2 years, some people longer than that. He spoke about having to bring banks out to the project. I think it was the 4th bank that finally said, yes, we'll help you. Sometimes approval doesn't come overnight, but you have to stay at it. If you're not in the race, you can't win. You must be in the race to cross that finish line. But also, we talk about education. So a statement was made, if it's normal, you're not afraid. We have to make home ownership normal. That should be normal conversation. We're talking a lot to our kids. We're talking a lot to each other, but what are we talking about? We need to normalize home ownership, normalize building wealth, building generational wealth. And last but certainly not least, we have to double down. It's time to double down. National Homeownership Month, happy Juneteenth. We have to double down. We have to invest in ourselves. We can't let anyone stop us. No one discourage us. Let's work together and make our communities, all of our communities better. This is for a better Chicago. So thank you, Chicago. Until next time, thank you, AJ, Bonita, Phil. You all rock. We're excited about you. And really thank you, everyone, and to our team at City Treasurer's Office who did an amazing job putting this together today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to Money Mondays with Melissa. We hope you enjoyed today's session and found value in the topic of discussion. Follow Chicago City Treasurer on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn to stay on top of all upcoming events. Remember, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the Chicago Treasurer's Office at 312-744-3356 or visit www.chicagocitytreasurer.com. We'll see you next time for Money Mondays with Melissa.